With hundreds of unsolved murders every year, we felt like 10 wasn't enough.
He frequented bars and restaurants and was violent towards men and women and picked up hitchhikers.
Welcome to WatchMojo.com, and today we're counting down our picks for another Top 10 Unsolved Murder Mysteries. For this list, we're taking a look at murder cases throughout history that have yet to be conclusively cracked. If you think we may be missing a famous murder mystery, be sure to check out our original list of the Top 10 Unsolved Murder Mysteries. Number 10. The Axeman of New Orleans Murders.
I am what you Orleanians call the Axeman.
Between 1918 and 1919, a serial killer, simply known as the Axeman, terrorized New Orleans. The Axeman is believed to have murdered 8 people, although it's speculated there were several more victims.
But slay thousands of your best citizens, for I am in close relationship with the angel of death.
Almost all the confirmed victims were Italian-American and were killed with an axe. On March 13, 1919, a person claiming to be the Axeman had a letter published in the newspaper, claiming he or she was not human, but rather a demon from hell. The murders suddenly stopped shortly thereafter, and the Axeman's identity was never discovered, though it is likely he or she was a fan of jazz, as the murderer claimed not to murder those who played that genre of music at their homes. Number 9. The Hinterkaifeck Murders. Hinterkaifeck was a small ranch in Germany and home to one of the country's strangest murder mysteries. On March 31, 1922, the 6 people living on the supposedly haunted farm were murdered with a mattock, which is like a pickaxe.
That's a cutter mattock, used for digging trenches and cutting roots.
The crime scene suggested each family member was led to the barn, where they were then killed. Among the victims were 7-year-old Caylee Gruber and her 2-year-old brother Josef. Just days before the massacre, their father, Andreas Gruber, discovered footprints in the snow leading to the farm, but none leading back away. Although police questioned over 100 suspects, nobody was ever convicted. Number 8. The Lake Bodom Murders.
Come on, I'll show you where you can get changed.
Like something out of a horror movie, 4 teens were camping under the stars near Finland's Lake Bodom one weekend when 3 of them were brutally murdered as they slept. Many suspects have been arrested over the years, with the 4th teen, Niels Wilhelm Gustafsson, even coming under suspicion in 2004, thanks to modern examination techniques. The theory was that Gustafsson had flown into a jealous rage due to his feelings for his new girlfriend, who was the victim that sustained the worst injuries. However, Gustafsson was acquitted and the case remains unsolved, fascinating native Finns to this day, to the point where Finnish heavy metal band Children of Bodom named themselves after the mystery. Number 7. Edgar Allan Poe.
You are Edgar Poe, correct?
I am. For a few more minutes, anyway.
This famed American writer was found delirious on a Baltimore street on October 3, 1849, and died days later on the 7th.
Do you have a cause of death?
I'm sorry, I don't. I have a few ideas, but as you know, he was brought in a very deranged state.
I'm told he was ranting.
Some historians believe Edgar Allan Poe died of alcohol poisoning, while others have suggested syphilis, cholera, or rabies. Some theorize, however, that he may have overdosed after being drugged by a cooping gang.
It was election day in Baltimore, and frequently thugs were hired by the politicians, and they would go out and kidnap people.
Cooping was a practice where unwilling participants were drugged and forced to vote for a certain candidate in an election, often several times. This would explain why Poe was found wearing clothes that weren't his, because he would have been too recognizable in Baltimore without a disguise. Yet the mystery of his death lives on forevermore.
Thus much let me avow, you are not wrong who deem that my days have been a dream.
Number 6. The Highway of Tears Murders.
Something went very wrong that night.
The Highway of Tears is a 500-mile-long stretch of road between Prince George and Prince Rupert in British Columbia, Canada. From 1969 to 2011, at least 18 women were murdered along this highway, although it is estimated that the real number may be in the 40s. The majority of women were in their teens, and many of them were Aboriginal, a fact that has led some critics to accuse the investigating police of racism. Although a few victims have been linked to a convicted serial killer named Bobby Jack Fowler, there's still no explanation for the other murders. Hitting a dead end, this case is seemingly on a road to nowhere.
It's very difficult, especially on Christmas or any holidays and her birthday. I sit here and cry.
Number 5. The Mad Butcher of Kingsbury Run. The Mad Butcher of Kingsbury Run was a serial killer in Cleveland that murdered at least 12 people throughout the 1930s, with other possible victims coming before and after. Also called the Cleveland Torso Murderer, almost all of the victims were beheaded and dismembered, with several never identified because their heads were never found, and because many were drifters or members of the working poor. Although the case was reviewed by Elliot Ness, the man who put Al Capone behind bars, no suspects were ever charged. Some theories have even claimed that there was no single butcher, but rather several different individual murderers.
Losing their heads, losing themselves to the butcher of Kingsbury Run.
Number 4. The Boy in the Box. In 1957, a young boy was found naked lying face up in a cardboard box in the woods near Philadelphia. The body was wrapped in a flannel blanket, and the boy's arms were folded across his stomach. The cause of death was the result of several blows to the head, and his entire body was covered in bruises. The boy's identity was never learned, and nobody had any confirmed information about the murder. And while there have been several theories, no hard evidence has ever been produced. The boy's identity and murderer remain unknown.
Still nags the bosses. They never so much as ID'd the boy.
Everyone in Philly knew about this kid.
The unknown boy.
But week after week, no one reported him missing and no one could name him.
Number 3. Andrew and Abby Borden.
Lizzie, what is it? Oh, Mrs. Churchill, do come in. Someone has killed Father.
On August 4th, 1892, Lizzie Borden discovered that both her parents had been brutally murdered. Her father had been repeatedly struck in the head with a sharp instrument, while her stepmother had also been brutally mutilated. Lizzie and Bridget Sullivan the maid were suspected, with both having acted suspiciously around the time of the murder. Lizzie reportedly burned a dress in the stove, and Sullivan was seen leaving the house carrying a parcel.
Miss Borden, we have been over this a dozen times, and each time a new version. Now, how will you have it?
I don't know.
Lizzie was eventually arrested and tried in a landmark sensational trial, but she was acquitted due to circumstantial evidence. No other suspects were ever charged.
Now, this is the axe that introduced at trial.
This is one that was found in the basement with others. Class characteristics are consistent with a weapon that could have been, but there was no blood on it. It looks like it's been cut.
Number 2, the Alphabet Murders. Also known as the Double Initial Murders, the Alphabet Murders transpired in New York State during the early 1970s. There were 3 victims: Carmen Colon, Wanda Walkowitz, and Michelle Mainza. Each girl was sexually assaulted before being strangled and was found in a town starting with the same initial as their names: Colon in Churchville, Walkowitz in Webster, and Mainza in Macedon. Strangely, each girl came from similar backgrounds. They all had learning disabilities, were Roman Catholic, and came from single-parent homes. This case was later connected to a series of similar murders in 1970s California, for which Joseph Naso was convicted and sentenced to death. But his involvement in the New York cases has not yet been confirmed.
If you're still alive, if you feel like you can get away with this, then you're sadly mistaken. But on the other hand, if you want to forgive yourself for doing this, then you don't have to try to talk to me about it. You just have to talk to God about it.
Before we unveil our number one pick, here are a few honorable mentions.
A fourth foot was found here on Kirkland Island, just south of Vancouver, and then the fifth foot was found last month floating right here off Westham Island.
Examination of the bodies determined that each of the victims had been bludgeoned with the claw hammer, and Sue and John had been stabbed repeatedly, including both being stabbed once in the throat.
Creepiest thing of all, a smiley face was drawn near where many of their drowned bodies were found.
The case ended as dramatically as it started, with a call to 911 from a panicked grandmother.
There's something wrong. I found my daughter's car today, and it smells like there's been a dead body in the damn car.
Number 1. Amber Hagerman.
Amber's family is keeping vigil, begging for her safe return.
The Amber Hagerman Task Force continues to look for a suspect in this case. However, it has been downsized.
She's the girl for which the Amber Alert was named. While Amber does stand for America's Missing Broadcast Emergency Response, it was actually originally named for Amber Hagerman, a 9-year-old girl who was abducted while riding her bike in Arlington, Texas on January 13, 1996. Just 4 days later, her body was discovered in a storm drainage ditch. Her killer still hasn't been found. While undoubtedly a tragedy, Amber's murder helped create tougher laws for child abductors and sex offenders, with Bill Clinton signing the Amber Hagerman Child Protection Act into law, which created the National Sex Offender Registry.
One of these days, that one little thing is going to happen and they're going to find him. And we just keep believing that, and it helps us to go on.
Do you agree with our list? Which unsolved murder mystery piques your interest? For more creepy top 10s published every day, be sure to subscribe to WatchMojo.com.
Early Sunday morning, October the 7th, about 5 o'clock in the morning, he regained consciousness, and he said, "God help my poor soul," and then he died.